And I'll ask for a call to order. Madam City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For a roll, Mayor John Herbedian,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem John Caposcia,
Here.
Councilmember Rochelle Arizmendi,
Present.
Councilmember Jean Goss.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum and may conduct city business.
Great, thank you. And please stand for the pledge and inspiration from Councilmember Goss.
Please place your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, I'm battling laryngitis here tonight, folks, so I hope you'll bear with me. Last year, about a week before President's Day, I brought some quotes in from presidents that I thought were, in most cases, inspirational. And I thought I'd do the same thing again now. We're a couple weeks away from President's Day. So I've got 8 different quotes from 8 different presidents. If my voice holds out, we'll get through all 8. If not, I'll stop at 5 or 6. But I'll start and I'll take them in sequence of their presidencies. George Washington. Of course, he was famous for saying lots of things. Quote, 99% of failures come from people who make excuses. Thomas Jefferson. On matters of style, swim with the current. On matters of principle, stand like a rock. Martin Van Buren. It's easier to do a job right than to explain why you didn't. Abraham Lincoln. Most folks are as happy as they make up their minds to be. Grover Cleveland, one of my favorites, by the way. Unswerving loyalty to duty, constant devotion to truth, and a clear conscience will overcome every discouragement and surely lead the way to usefulness and high achievement. The Rough Rider, Teddy Roosevelt. If you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't sit for a month. Calvin Coolidge. If you see 10 troubles coming down the road, you can be sure that 9 will run into the ditch before they reach you. And John F. Kennedy. One person can make a difference, and everyone should try. Thank you.
Thank you. Those were great.
It held out.
Very nice. Any changes to the agenda? If not, I'll take a motion.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And the minutes.
Mayor, before I have a change. On page 11, at the end of item 2, I had forgotten to put the motion was passed by unanimous vote. So that
Okay.
needs to be added to that item.
With that change, do we have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes
I'll second.
with the change.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we will do mayor and city council reports. Anyone care to go first?
I'll start. Just a huge congratulations and kudos to Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem for your State of the City. Just really great news to share and so much to brag about. Really great turnout and really proud of the work that we have done as a council, that city manager has done and is leading of the staff and the team. So huge congratulations.
Thank you.
I would like to add my congratulations to both the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem. They put on an absolutely splendid State of the City address on Thursday. And I thought it was really fitting, I might even use the word brilliant, to say that it was, we did it at the middle school, which if you're paying attention to Pasadena's unified school issues, that was, whether we even have a middle school was kind of in question for a while this year. And it truly is the jewel of the district as middle schools go. And I think that was really a wonderful thing for the city to do. And I really was very proud of you guys for what you did, what you had to say, of course, which was all very positive and exciting. So,
Thank you.
I would just encourage everybody who didn't come to watch it on the Channel 3 video, or is it available via the streaming on the website?
If it's not, we can make it so it is.
Yeah, if we appreciate it, because you really want to see the performance of, we had the marching band for the middle school, we had the St. Rita's Choir, and we had a little
Band.
rock
Fall
and roll
Risk.
band,
Yeah.
of middle schoolers
Middle
that
school.
closed it for us, and they were
They're
really
great.
good. So it's, that alone is worth the price of admission.
Agreed. Thank you all. I thought it was a lot of fun to give, and thanks for all those that showed up in person. And if you do get a chance, watch it. I think it is informative, and I think it encapsulates what we've been doing over the last couple of years. So, thanks again. And then we'll go now to public comment for items not on the agenda.
Good evening, David Gordon, in my guise as president of the Sierra Madre Playhouse, where we've had today to send out some very disappointing news. We've had to cancel our production of Charlotte's Web. For the last 5 years, we have started a series called Theatre for Young Audiences, where we put on plays of very high quality designed to attract young people to live theatre. And for Charlotte's Web, we had 46 performances booked, 10 for the public and 36 for schools. And we had 2,600 school children who had booked to come and 400 teachers. We've had to cancel because of the unintended consequences, I think unintended, maybe not, of Assembly Bill 5, which has been introduced as from January the 1st to address the gig economy. And somewhat to our surprise, we discovered just last week that actors, when they're employed in a theatre, are employees, no longer freelance. And as employees, they have to be paid on an hourly rate, and they have to be paid minimum wage. So up to now, we've had agreements with actors that they get paid a certain amount, and that covers rehearsals and it covers performance. The extra costs, because there are so many performances, we had to have 2 casts. The extra costs of mounting this production would have been an extra $38,000, a sum which we couldn't possibly afford and wouldn't have the time to raise, and I don't think our prospects of raising that sum would be good anyway. So, sad to say, we've had to cancel, and we're considering how we can bring back this theatre for young audiences in a different format. We're considering working with other theatres similarly affected to see whether we can have some kind of carve-out of the legislation. The proponents of the legislation is now aware of the fact that there are unintended consequences, particularly for the performing arts, and is having listening sessions to hear what can be done about it. Our other productions are not affected because they don't have double casts, and because most of them are being put on under equity rules, and equity has already established that people have to be paid on an hourly basis at minimum wage. So the effect of the equity agreement has been that our costs have gone up significantly over the past few years, but they're not going up unexpectedly and suddenly in the way that has affected Charlotte's Web. So that's the sad news. I want everybody to know about it. We're very concerned. We'll try and work our way around it. But it's very, very bad news for the kids who are looking forward to Charlotte's Web. Thank you.
No, thank you. And I think it's terrible news. And I think it is an unintended consequence, but I think it's something that we should talk about as a council, how we can help. Reach out to the author and the legislature to see if we can magnify and speed that up, because that's what we should do. So you should talk to the city manager, and we've already been in contact via email, but we should stay in contact about it. So
Okay, thank you.
thanks.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah.
Thanks for everybody for your time. This is Sam Berndt. We have Manasa Makaneni, Dee Garcia, and Tina Wu Fredericks along as well in support of a request that we'd like to submit to the City Council to revise the default level of the Clean Power Alliance arrangement for residents and businesses in Sierra Madre. So currently, as you're aware, the default level is set at 50%. And this was, I just want to preface this by saying that the city of Sierra Madre is one of roughly 30 cities out of some 60 incorporated cities in the county that recognize that this is an important thing to do. Back in 2018, I think your management analyst, James Carlson, and Mayor Harabedian have been point people, as well as the whole city council, on making this happen. And I just want to congratulate the Sierra Madre City Council for taking this action to put us in this position now. Many cities have not. I think the events of the last couple of years that have intervened since mid-2018 certainly, I think, have grabbed everyone's attention. So I'd like to just allow the last half of this for Sam, who is a local resident and a JPL engineer, to speak a little bit about the importance of this request. We'd like to just basically ask that the City Council place this on, if I understand how this works, place this on a near future agenda. I do want to also mention that I'm told by the Clean Power Alliance that a change to this effect to go to 100% would need to be instructed to Clean Power Alliance by April 1, no later than April 1, to make it effective this year. Otherwise, we would wait a full year to make this change. Okay, so Sam, if you would. Excuse me? My name? I'm sorry, Keith Berman. B-E-R-M-A-N.
Could I by chance get a reset on that 3 minutes? Is that allowable?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, so hey everyone, my name's Sam Berndt. I am a 25-year-old software engineer. I'm an organizer with Sunrise Movement, and I am speaking on my own behalf today. And I was born and raised in Michigan, so growing up, I remember in elementary school, I would, every recess we would go, and like starting in October, we would start having snow and like it would stick. And I used to build like snow forts with everyone and like throw snowballs at people, whatever. It wasn't allowed, but I did it. And, over the last, every year really ever since then, the snow just kept on not sticking. And in college and over the last few years, particularly, last 2 years I remember very vividly, we had snowed once in November last year and then started snowing in January. And then it started snowing once in November this year, and then it stuck starting January 3rd, which is definitely a little bit later than October when it used to stick. And so it really just draws the conclusion in tandem with how the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, their special report on 1.5 degrees warming, said that we have until 2030 to cut our emissions globally by 45% to avert the worst of the climate catastrophe. And frankly, right now, there just isn't enough being done about that. And, luckily, I'm lucky enough to have been given the opportunity to grow up and experience a climate where, we were meant for. 300,000 years of human existence, we have had a pretty stable climate. However, kids that are born now have 10 years before they no longer will have a chance to do that. And in fact, kids born now are growing up in a climate where Australia and California are on fire. They're growing up in a climate where Iowa is underwater. They can no longer grow crops in the breadbasket of America. They grow up in a climate where Florida and New York are suffering massive hurricanes that are destroying their ways of life. And I'm also lucky enough to have been born early enough to be able to do something about it. And because of this, I find it my responsibility to, and I hope you will too. George Washington Carver once said, 99% of failures come from people who have a habit of making excuses. I hope that you won't make that mistake. And due to that, I'm asking that Sierra Madre City Council default to 100% renewable energy via the CPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate it. Any other public comments? Items not on the agenda. And we agendize future items at the end of the meeting, but we'll be sure to do that. So thank you. Okay. We'll move on now to the presentation that we have on the agenda, and it's by the Sierra Madre Friends and the Library Foundation about the plans for a future library. And Mayor Stockley looks to be the one that's going to be giving it.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Great moments are born of great opportunity. That's what we have here tonight. When Herb Brooks said those words at the beginning of a pregame talk to a group of young, talented athletes almost exactly 40 years ago, those young men were on the brink of one of the great, amazing, miraculous American upsets in Olympic history, defeating the Soviet Union hockey team. What we're talking about doesn't have nearly the significance nationally or internationally of that event, but I can guarantee you that if we are successful, they will be talking about what we're doing 40 years from now. To remind you, I'd like to go through a quick slide presentation of the design that we've presented before, just to refresh the community's memory and also the members of the council. Great, thank you, Jan. So here we have the site plan. Existing site, we're not moving the library from its location, we're just building a new one where the beloved one has been for almost 60 years. More than 60 years. So here's the street level that you would enter from Sierra Madre Boulevard. You know, I teach U.S. history and I'm used to maps that are oriented north and south and all that sort of thing, but the south is at the top, the north is at the bottom, the west is over here on the right side, and the east is on the left side. But you get the sense the main lobby will be the entry from Sierra Madre Boulevard, and it provides a wealth of resources that the community is going to be able to use for decades to come. This is the lower level, which would be entered from the Mariposa side of the property. And it contains the meeting room and other resources like the archives, giving them a well-deserved home as well as climate and environment where those resources can last. There we see an idea of the elevation from the Sierra Madre street level. And you can see it does incorporate the plaza area that's already there and expands it a little bit. Entry garden. Here we are inside the main lobby. This is the parking level from, again, Mariposa, and entry to the community room, which is on the right side. Let's see, I guess I can do this. Up here? All right, there we go. Beautiful. So the community room here, this entrance level, there's an elevator inside to make it easy access for those people that would like to or need to use an elevator. And then here again we have the reading area on the main level, the stacks. All of this ADA compliant and still maintaining our current level of collection. Children's room, in a lot of ways, one of the most valuable assets or resources the library offers. So I'm here tonight to kind of give you a update on the numbers, where we're moving along in the process, and then answer any questions that you might have. The formation of the parcel tax petition drive and campaign committee is progressing well, and we have set the achievable goal of February 15th for having the ballot measure language ready for submission, with our intent to circulate the petition to the city clerk and city attorney. From information generated by PBWS, the architectural firm hired by the Friends of the Library to come up with this design that we've just looked at, the campaign for a 21st century library is working with a total project cost of $16 million. And I can give you the breakdown to that if you would like. The Sierra Madre Library Foundation will do some preliminary legwork towards fundraising campaign this summer and really gear up once the parcel tax is approved by the voters in November of 2020, with a goal of raising the funds for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. In the budget, that's $1.5 million. In addition, the city has allocated or has address the concerns about deferred maintenance and repairs that are needed in the existing library building at about $1.5 to $1.8 million. And we would ask that the city commit those funds to this project upon approval of the parcel tax, knowing that we're going forward. Those funds have already been discussed in, I believe, your budgeting process as the needs to bring us up to ADA compliance, address a lot of the maintenance issues that are existing in that building. So this is perhaps a longer term investment of those funds that'll pay rewards to the community for years and years to come. We would also like to have you consider the waiver of any discretionary fees, permit fees, any sort of hookups to utilities that might need to be redone or expanded for the new building, as another way of helping us address those costs that are in that budget. Finally, we are looking at a mechanism through the parcel tax to address concerns about maintaining staff and service levels once we have this brand new 21st century library. I can go into the details. I believe you might have already seen these, but I guess at this point I'm ready to answer any questions you might have about our progress and where we are.
Thank you. Well, why don't we just start with that first question about progress, where we are, and then we'll just open it up, I think, to individual questions.
Okay, well, we're forming the committee, and we're working on the ballot language. That obviously is the first step before we can submit anything to the city. So I think, as I said, our goal is to have that by the middle of February. Okay. And at that point, once we've gone through the process of filing our intent, publishing it, we're going to go out and gather signatures. We have people chomping at the bit to go out and get people to sign on this. So we're very encouraged that this grassroots citizens initiative is going to be successful.
Good, great. I see some writing, so who wants to go first?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Just as far as the city commitment of 1.5 million and to waive fees, city manager, do we agendize that and approve that in advance? I mean, just occurs to me that they'd probably want to go into this before they start collecting signatures, some certainty that we would do that. I mean, it's pretty obvious that if they put it on, well, I can't really say that, but I mean, if you get this, you collect the signatures and it gets on the ballot, you know, at some point we have to approve that money. So when would we do that?
Mayor Pro Tem, I believe we would address the funds through the normal budget process. We're probably looking at adoption in April or May of this year, which will be early enough, well before the November vote, that those funds could be identified.
Okay.
As far as the waiver of fees, we've contacted the city attorney, and to the extent that the group putting this on can identify specific fees that they want waived, we're happy to do so if it's allowable under California law.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Stockley. Just a question about, it sounds like you're still exploring it and you're still looking into getting more information, but I was not aware that bond money can be used for operations. Is there anything you can share on that?
That's one of the things we're investigating at this point, is how we might be able to address that concern.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be really interested in that answer.
Councilmember Harrisman, the parcel tax can be used for maintenance, operation, staffing, any purpose that's approved by the public. And so depending on how the ballot was worded, if it included maintenance, operations, or upkeep, then staffing could also be included in there as well. As long as it's transparent, neutral language, whatever the voters approve, it can be used for.
Okay. So, and again, interested, learning more, so I'm assuming you'd have to budget it where you have those operational dollars included in your total cost for X amount of years?
So how it would work on the ballot is the committee would have to identify the total top dollar cost. So it shall raise, in this case, 16 million over 30 years, and it would go towards the following, and there would be a list. And then how the city structures to pay for that through bonds, that's kind of up to the city. So as long as the parcel tax language is approved, anything that's approved by the voters, those funds can be used for.
Interesting.
And 16 million is the total. So I mentioned that there's going to be a fundraising effort for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. That is included in there. So we're not going to bond for that entire amount. We're expecting that we're going to have other sources. So in doing our numbers and still trying to figure out how to include operations and maintenance, we're probably looking at a bond in the amount of 13 plus million, something like that.
Thank you.
Depending on the city's.
Right. The 1.5 and everything, yep.
So follow that up, Mayor Stockley. So you're saying that the 16 minus the 1.5 minus the 1.5, that gets us to 13.
Right.
That does not account for the potential funding for staffing.
Correct.
So it's going to
Correct.
be, we don't have an idea what that's going to be.
So I think in doing our calculations, we're using that $13 million for the bond amount, the construction bond amount, and then in addition to that, we'll figure out the mechanism or the language to address the operations and maintenance. So I think the way it would look, you know, to the residents, they're going to get one parcel tax on their tax bill, but it's going to be so much towards the construction and so much allocated towards future operations and maintenance.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that we have a consent item, number 7 tonight, that is related to this with Stifel, Nicholas and Company, which I think will help with this process. So I think it's exciting. I think the project really looks great. I think that we need to iron out, obviously, the details. I mean, my personal opinion is if the 1.5 has already been set aside for the library, it should stay there and it should be spent on the library. Now, I do think that will be addressed in the budget process, but I think having the specific number for you guys before, it's a little chicken and the egg, and I think that's why the Mayor Pro Tem was asking, because they need to put a number in the ballot initiative before circulating it. So if we were to defer this until May, and then for whatever reason the council votes not to allocate the 1.5, they're 1.5 million short, right? So I guess how do we avoid that?
I think if we get in general council nodding their heads tonight that they want staff to identify up to $1.5 million in the budget, then that's enough direction for us to go ahead and do that.
Well, I feel like we have to, right? Because if it fails, we need the 1.5. If it goes forward, it's still, I mean, the money's there for the library either way. So, you know.
That's correct, Mayor. I think the only difference is the 1.5 in a situation where the bond measure doesn't pass. Likely wouldn't be spent in the same fiscal years. You probably wouldn't do the roof, the electrical system, ACL at the same time.
Got it.
Having said that, if council is saying they're prioritizing the 1.5 million in the library, then we'll change some other things that we had planned and we'll push those out. But we'll have to get into our capital programs to determine where we're slotting different projects in it. But in general, if council's, and it seems like council is saying that the 1.5 million is a priority, then we can bring it forward in the budget process, and I think it gives enough assurance that it'll be there.
Okay. I think that's good. And I guess the only other question is, I mean, between now and February, next council meeting, not much time, but to the extent that there's anything you need from a legal perspective, I mean, I think that our city attorney is not your attorney, but I think there should be a conversation, if need be, you know, involving some of these questions, right? And I think we've talked about them before. I don't know if you guys have independent legal counsel. You may, but how can we facilitate some sort of
So, Mayor,
interaction?
to the extent that if the bond measure is successful, it actually would be the city that's on the hook to finance and figure this out. We would engage Stiefel. As you noticed, it's on consent tonight, and they're able to either provide assistance to us or refer us to experts who can give that assistance.
Okay. So, and by us, do you mean the Friends and the Library Foundation too?
Us would be the city. They're allowed to, they'll be engaged with us, but because we have a vested interest in the outcome of this, we're able to share
Yeah.
that information.
I just think that makes sense.
It seems to me
Yeah.
that this is, any way you look at it, it is a partnership, you know? I mean, if it was something like the city council was on record saying we're against this, then that'd be a different story.
Yeah.
But we all have a vested interest in our library in the town, and if this is a direction that, you know, the foundation, the board of trustees, and Friends of the Library want to go, well, we should cooperate with them wherever we can. That's, you know, so.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't want to break the law, but if it's legal, then we want to be able to partner with them.
Right, and I think to Councilmember Arizmendi's point and that point, then assuming we approve consent item number 7, I would think that Stiefel and the committee that's endeavoring to do this could talk as soon as tomorrow?
That's correct.
Okay.
It's just the engagement would be with the city.
Got it.
But they would be able to interact, yes.
Okay.
I think that'd be helpful. So, yeah.
I want to thank you, Mayor Stockley, and all the members of the board that are here tonight from the foundation, members of the Friends of the Library. We've been talking about this for years and years, and I just get this feeling we're getting closer and closer and closer. Very excited and very thankful to you guys for all the work you're doing.
Well, I'm old enough not to get involved in lost causes. Be assured that I don't think this is a lost cause.
Thank you. This is a presentation. We usually don't open it up for public comment. I'm not sure anyone wants to come up and ruin what just happened, you know, so is everyone okay just letting it lie there? Okay. Well, good job, Mayor Stockley, and we look forward to seeing you guys on February 14th. So now we'll move on to our regular agenda, starting with the consent calendar. Madam City Clerk.
We have 8 items tonight on consent calendar. Item 1A, adoption of resolution 20-06 of the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre approving certain demands. B, consideration of acceptance of Firehouse Subs Public Safety Foundation grant for the purpose of acquiring a Lucas 3 chest compression system. Item C, recommendation to approve change order number 2 to the 2019 water main replacement project construction contract in an amount of $204,631. Item D, cancellation of uncollectible account receivables and establishment of accounts receivable write-off policy. Item E, second reading of ordinance 1423, amending municipal code to include e-cigarettes. Item F, resolution 20-05, adopting revisions and additions to the city's delinquent account policy to comply with SB 998. Item G, consideration of underwriter engagement letter identifying Stifel, Nicholas and Company as bond underwriter. And in conclusion, H, consideration of resolution 20-08, authorizing the city manager to execute agreements with the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration for implementation of a local transaction and use tax. And resolution 20-09, authorizing the examination of transactions, sales, and the use tax records. And that concludes the consent items.
Thank you. Any questions on any of the items?
Just one quick question.
Sure.
Regarding resolution 20-05, and maybe I'm not sure if I'm addressing it to city manager, but the resolution in itself will ensure that we're in compliance by the February 1 date?
That's correct.
Thank you.
I do have one question about the write-off of uncollectible accounts. Is there a situation where we would turn these over to a collection agency?
So it's possible, depending on the amount that's outstanding. Generally, that's not something we've done, but it is a good policy to try and collect the collectible debt to the extent it doesn't cost more to collect it than what you'd receive.
Well, that would always be the case with turning it over to a collection agency. They pay you immediately for every one that you turn over. It's 20% on the 20 cents on the dollar, something like that. Or
That's correct, Mayor Pro Tem. Right now, we anticipate writing it off after 2 years. I don't want to say no, there would never be that situation, because there could be an account that has a lot of funds outstanding that we may want to try and collect instead of write off.
yeah, okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? I'll open up for public comment. Any public comment or questions on any of the consent items? And seeing none, we'll bring it back.
I do have a couple of comments.
Sure.
Just with regard to the grant for the fire department for the respiration device. I just want to comment that this is just another thing that we're doing. It doesn't cost us anything, but it just will help to save lives. And I'm just really proud of that with our staff and our fire department finding these grants that are available to us and continually making this a safer place to live as the population is aging in town. Also, just again, with the change order for the water main work in the canyon, I mean, again, this is just, we talked about that at our mayor's State of the City, just what a challenge it is to upgrade some of the pipes here because of the situation in the canyon. But this is what makes Sierra Madre, and I just think it's incredible that you know, as we go through this, that we're finding ways to just get this work done and improve the infrastructure. Okay, and the other one about the delinquent accounts or uncollectible accounts. I mean, this is just another example of our city manager just cleaning little things up. I mean, we had 675 accounts that have been on the books as accounts receivable, and we count that as money that we expect to receive every year, but we never do because these accounts are uncollectible. So it just makes sense in any accounting environment that you're in that you write this stuff off and get it off the books. So it's a small thing, but yet I just thanks for just going after this and cleaning these little things up.
Any other comments? Yeah, can't argue with that. Ditto. How about a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And that passes unanimously. Let's go to our first discussion item, which is consideration of repeal of ordinance 1356U in its entirety. Repeal of the declaration of water shortage emergency.
Mayor, we have a very brief presentation, then we're happy to answer any questions. Council adopted the water shortage emergency, the moratorium, in 2014. This is a lot of words on this slide, but you really only need to pay attention to the last sentence where it says a water moratorium can be enacted without depleting the water supply to the extent where there's insufficient water for human consumption. That's, again, Water Code Section 350. If you read further into the Water Code Section 355, it's also says what the city must do, and that's during the extent of the moratorium. It may remain in place, but the city is obligated to try and replenish or augment its water supply. When the water supply has either been replenished or augmented, the moratorium emergency would no longer exist. You've seen the water availability slides here a couple of times now. Our annual demand's about 2,300 acre feet. Our groundwater source is about 1,000 acre feet annually. Our Met connection is 2,500 acre feet annually. The Arcadia wheeling agreement is as necessary requested. So without putting a number on it, the city currently has reliable perpetual access to about 150% of the annual anticipated and current need. When the joint well starts operation in 2022, it'll be another 1,300 acre feet, up to, it could be 1,000 acre feet. And then at that point, we're exceeding the 150%. So understanding what Water Code Section 355 requires the city to do, staff is recommending the repeal of the ordinance in its entirety this evening.
Thank you. That was quick. Those are nice presentations when it's only 3 slides. So, any questions?
Oh, I do have one question. As far as the joint well, so we have, as of a week or two ago, we have the commitment where the San Gabriel Municipal Water District voted to fund this. So at what point do we have any kind of a contract or agreement with Arcadia, or just a letter of intent to start this process to develop the joint well?
Mayor Pro Tem, the wheeling agreement the council executed a few weeks ago has in the language that this is a precursor to a joint well, and upon construction of a joint well, the wheeling agreement will automatically terminate, and we'll have a joint well in operation.
Yeah.
Council will consider a joint well operating agreement. We're working on that together with Arcadia as we speak. That'll come forward later this year. But the bills for it, San Gabriel Valley Municipal Water District, as you noted, have already started to come out, and we'll start processing those. So we're already through location and design. We've awarded, I think, Arcadia's awarded a preferred vendor, but we may not be that far down there yet. The point is that we're well into the process already.
Okay, yeah, good. So do we pay and the municipal water district reimburses us, or, like the contract for the exploration of site?
To the extent that we get the bills beforehand, the water district will pay that. We're asking for reimbursement for some costs that we already took on this fiscal year that the municipal water district will reimburse us for.
Yeah, okay, good.
Great. Any other questions? Open it up for public comment, questions?
Good evening, Mayor and Council Member. My name is Petra Wutarsa, and I would like to discuss regarding this moratorium. So we acquired an empty land in the city of Sierra Madre in 2012, and we've been paying property taxes and maintenance expenses. But unfortunately, we cannot occupy this piece of land or build any home on it due to the moratorium. So our family plan is to build a house for my own personal use, especially since I got married recently and hoping to build a family in Sierra Madre. We have been waiting for the opportunity to build a house on this empty land, so we respectfully request that the City Council will consider lifting the moratorium.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll bring it back for discussion. Any comments before a vote?
The only comment is just pretty straightforward to me. We have mitigated the problem with the additional water, and I can't see that there's how we could possibly maintain the moratorium anymore. It's that simple.
I can't add anything to what you just said.
You know, I probably was the most apprehensive member of this council to really see the evidence as to why this should be lifted. But at this point, as city manager's presentation showed, the partial funding for the joint well, it's evident that the findings that we based this moratorium on are no longer there. So I know we've been looking into this for quite a while, and the point that we're at, I don't think there's any argument of not lifting the water moratorium.
I think where we've come in the last 5.5 years from the water situation is really incredible. And I think over the last 3 years, it's really been improved quite significantly. And that's, you know, kudos again to our staff, from city manager, Director Semino, and the whole crew really on working on this. And I think that this is the right thing to do given where we are now. And I think where we are is in a good place from a water perspective. And so, yeah, I think that I agree with all my colleagues. And it seems like a no-brainer at this point. So with that, we'll take a motion for a vote.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And that's passed unanimously. Then we'll go on to item number 2, potential solar project.
Yes, and good evening, Mayor and City Council. The final item on this evening's agenda is a presentation of a potential solar project to be located at the City Yards facility. Staff is recommending that the City Council provide direction to staff. The Council may direct staff to bring back a consideration of an award of contract to the most qualified applicant and proceed with implementing the project. The Council may decline to pursue the project, and of course, the Council may direct staff to return with additional information. Council may recall a few years back receiving a presentation on a solar project that incorporated the use of parking roof stalls and panels mounted on top. These are to be located in various sections and parking lots throughout the city. This concept was abandoned, however, due to the added construction costs. And in an effort to attain the best per watt project, it was decided to explore a ground-mounted array system on underutilized public property. Property that we identified, you may recognize 2 basins in the southwesternmost portion of our City Yards facility. This right here would be the right field for Hal Dapper Field. Just a quick schematic of the concept. The solar array farm would take up approximately this. We will go in and check out the very boundaries and with considerations of the tree line and other considerations. And then finally, just to get an idea, looking to the west, here's the location that was identified and that will be connected to the electrical panel that's right there that circulates the water for the water distribution system. The City of Sierra Madre has made several recent strides towards both increasing the efficiency and resiliency of water department, as well as increasing the use of clean energy when fiscally responsible opportunities present themselves. This project intends to continue with both of these trends. This project is estimated to achieve a 43% energy offset. That's 989,000 kilowatt hours per year of new clean energy. It's also estimated to have a 31% billing offset, and that amounts to $126,000 per year. Also, 715 tons of CO2 emissions will be avoided per year, and that also translates to 1,500 barrels of oil not being consumed per year. Just a quick timeline on how this project has restarted. Early in 2019, we had discussions on restarting the project. And one thing that we were able to take advantage of during this was the inclusion of the Mayor Harabedian, Mayor Pro Tem John Capocha, as well as two resident industry experts, Matthew Schneider and Robert Parkhurst, who provided invaluable analysis for us to go forward. There's also staff that included the city manager, myself, and on occasion, Jose Reynoso and Chris Semino. On July 31st, the RFP was issued. On October 2019, we received 8 good proposals, and we received them and analyzed them. On December 11th, we had 4 of the firms interview in front of staff, as well as Matthew Schneider and Robert Parkhurst. We were able to identify what we call the best value proposal so that we could bring a project concept to the City Council to possibly go forward with. The total turnkey cost of this best value proposal is $1,134,029, which comes to $2.04 per watt. You compare that to what we were looking at with the parking structure, and that was between $2.25 to $2.30 per watt. So going with the ground-mounted array made a considerable difference. We also took a look and determined the best value. It was based on the quality of the design and the equipment, the availability of the equipment, the portfolio of similar projects, industry reputation, and finally communications. Again, our resident experts were invaluable identifying who was presenting us with the best equipment, who could tell us that they had the equipment already, that they weren't going to be hung up on new tariffs that could come, so that the residents really got us through this process. As far as the source of funding, staff will negotiate the options with the identified firm if we are to go forward. Just in a real broad sense, we're looking at a full cash payment or possibly a combination of a down payment and then a financing structure. We will bring back precise information on the funding if we bring back the award of contract consideration. Staff received 2 communications from the community prior to this agenda item, and I had told each of them that I would read them for the record at the council meeting, and then I will provide them for the city council. The first one was received on January 25th from Robert Parkhurst. He's a resident at 375 East Grandview Avenue. Dear Mayor Harabedian, I am writing to express my support of discussion item 2 on the January 28th, 2020 City Council agenda. Specifically, I encourage the City Council to adopt Alternative 1 and direct staff to bring back the consideration of an award of contract to the most qualified project applicant and to proceed with implementing the solar panel project under consideration at the City Yards facility. I would advocate for this position in person at the January 28th City Council, but I am unfortunately on a flight during the meeting. In full disclosure of my support, and as stated in the staff report, I was asked by the city to participate in the request for the proposal RFP process for this project. It has been a privilege and honor to support the city with my time and expertise. As part of the process, I provided feedback on the RFP and reviewed the 8 bids the city received. There were multiple competitive and compelling proposals, and ultimately the review team, consisting of city staff and residents, winnowed the list down to 2 projects. I understand city staff has recommended that the council receive additional information on a potential solar project. My hope is that staff can provide the council with the necessary information at the January 28th meeting so the project can proceed to the consideration of award of contract. The company under consideration stood out from the others with their thorough, competitive, and innovative proposal. Their proposal was easy to follow, and the company has a long and successful track record. They have installed more than 3 million kilowatts of renewable energy across 31 states in the past 2 decades. Finally, they offered the most innovative options to finance the project and provided multiple options for the city staff to consider. This project will continue the city's environmental leadership. It will generate almost 1 million kilowatts hours per year and provide approximately 43% of the energy the city uses with a clean, sustainable, and local source. It is the equivalent to not driving 1.7 million miles by the average passenger vehicle. And this project will also save the city money, offsetting $126,000 per year and pay for itself before the end of the decade. As we continue to respond to the impacts of climate change, energy independence and resilience will become more important issues. This project will put the city on the leading edge of this response and help us with necessary transition to a clean energy future. Finally, as an environmental professional with local small business, a former energy company employer, member of the Clean Power Alliance Community Advisory Committee, commissioner on the city's Energy, Environment, and Natural Resources Commission, participant in the project, and resident, this project is in the best interest of the city. It will provide us with local renewable energy, continue our environmental leadership, and save us money. I support the continued pursuit of this project and implementation by the city. On another note, we received this January 27th from William Ray, resident at 510 East Laurel. I am a resident who will be most impacted by the solar farm in the settling ponds. I would like to request you read this letter at a city meeting. I am traveling, so I can't attend. I am for solar, but would like you to reconsider your plan a bit. First, gathering less water makes no long-term sense. I would like to recommend that you put the panels over the employee parking lot in the city yards, office buildings, and elsewhere. During our hot summers, everyone competes for shade, and many new companies like Envision Solar are starting to do this. These parking bays can be attractive and are the future. My other point is the choice of where the solar panels will be put has not been fully thought out, in my opinion. The lowest point in the settling basins makes more sense as they will never fill up. They also would be behind city buildings and the baseball park, not next to me and my neighbors. The city's choice in the middle of, after 20 years here, I have seen these ponds and they are filled in heavy rain. I have never seen the lower ponds filled. We already put up with the tremendous noise of the city trucks, noise backing up and roaring around all day. Years ago, I had to accept the gate being put in and turn the alley into a public walkaway. Also, people turn their cars around all day in my driveway. I love Sierra Madre, but the city is asking a lot of me and my neighbors. Can you give up a break at this time? And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. I'm sorry, let me just go through the alternatives one more time. The City Council may direct staff to bring back the consideration of award of contract to the most qualified project applicant and proceed with implementing the project. City Council may decline to pursue the project, and the City Council may direct staff to return with additional information. Thank you.
Thank you. Very nice presentation, very thorough. And I inadvertently didn't thank Director Reynoso on the last item, so thank you. My mistake. Any questions for a management analyst? Yeah.
The $2.04 per watt, was that including financing costs, or is that a cash deal? Or
That's for the project. That's what you will get with their base price. The next step we would take, and it's a little bit cart and horse for us too, we need to go back and negotiate and discuss a project. We have to have some backing with the council before we do that. But what I found was the best proposal, the best options for us for you to consider in that.
So the cost of financing could add to the cost per watt if you had to finance this?
We will determine that,
Okay.
but I imagine it could. Yeah.
Okay, and another question about Mr. Ray's comment. Have we thought about moving it to the lower spreading ponds that he mentions?
Sure.
'Cause
What are
I have a couple of issues.
Yeah.
The first, of course, is that is very close to some residences, and namely his, but others. Also, I'm trying to picture it now, but if you're sitting down there watching or participating in a ball game at Dapper Field, I think that's going to change the view there quite considerably. And not for the better.
Yeah, the first thing I had to do when we started reopening and looking at an open piece of public land is I had to talk to Director Reynoso and ask him if this was a suitable location. And he did tell me that these basins are very underutilized. They're not utilized. I don't know if they're utilized more or less than the very bottom ones, but we did get consensus with him that this would be a good location. As far as interaction with the ball field, we will be doing the site preparation with our own crews. And we've always considered they're going to have to be a little bit lower and out of sight of the ball field and the neighbors. There's going to be considerations going forward on the tree screen. At one point, are we putting a nice tree screen for privacy and to avoid people seeing it? And how much energy are we losing by going down another 10 foot with the trees or something like that?
So follow up. So you're talking about a tree screen to the west of the array.
Yeah, and well, actually, what's existing there is something that we are going to really take a good close look at, including this screen right here is really what's going to have to be looked at. Right. Can the trees be removed and replaced? Can they be pruned to a certain level? If another 10 feet of pruning gets us another 200,000 kilowatts per year, then that's stuff we'll have to talk about. Right. We also have concerns about our Sierra Madre children, and if they know that there are solar panels there. I know a lot of them are bombers. I see them every day, but you have to be a really strong left-handed hitter to get it up there.
I don't think so.
Yeah, we would prefer that they don't even see them. It's not on their mind, but there's also a chance for netting and certain things like that to help protect those panels.
They'd have to crush that ball.
I have a question. What is the impact on the fellow that wrote the letter? I mean, what is the impact?
Yeah, let me show you where
I
can show you where he is. Mr. Ray is on the corner of East Laurel there and Sycamore. I sent letters to across the street, Mr. Ray, one down, and then a little bit farther down. So there are 4 residents. Actually, I might have gone up to that one. Okay. He does have his own private tree screen of, I think, 4 Chinese elms on his property, but there are also oaks and other shrubberies that are right here. And I did offer, I said, if the council does decide to go forward, the first thing I'd be happy to do is meet with you and talk about all the things that we're going to do to make less of an impact on what he'll have to experience.
Yeah.
But I think that is your question though. I mean, what really is the impact? Is it is it the noise? Is it the fact that he thinks that having solar panels that close to him is somehow unhealthy? What exactly do you think his concern is?
Well, the only thing that he was really specific about in his correspondence was construction noise and dust. This project will go through CEQA. The project that we were looking at before also went through CEQA. There were not a whole lot of items that came up as far as putting solar panels in the city yards area. We would be going for a mitigated negative declaration, and I recall that of the items we have to mitigate are nesting birds. There's certain times of the year you can't prune the trees. Cultural or paleontological resources. And then the one that my favorite is anticipated discovery of valuable resources or even human remains.
Right. Which
Those
goes
will
to
have to be
paleo.
mitigated for.
Yeah, if it could be a
Knowing Sierra Madre, we've heard about where the berries are
Right.
the
Bodies are buried?
and
Yeah.
how deep.
Yeah.
Maybe it's in the settling basins.
I want to ask a question I know the answer to, but I think it'll provide a little bit of background to Mr. Ray's concern and really give, I think, the community some context that we didn't just kind of put our finger in the air and plop it on these spreading basins. Matthew Schneider and Mr. Carlson, over a year ago, explored where best to put these solar panels. So Matthew Schneider is a professional within the space. He is a high-level executive at a solar company called Sunfolding, I believe is the company's name. He's been doing this for over a decade and a half. and he essentially helped us locate what he thought to be the most suitable location. I'm going to ask this as a question. Is that correct?
That's absolutely
Okay.
correct.
So do you want to just explain a little bit of that process? Because I think that Mr. Ray's correspondence makes it sound like we tripped over ourselves and just found a plot of land. I mean, in reality, it couldn't be more different. We explored not only the parking lot, option, but all the settling basins.
Right.
And my understanding was that putting it over the other settling basins was by far less effective and, from a water perspective, way less optimal. So I just want to make sure I have all those facts correct.
Yeah, we were basically told to stay away from anything east of this area so that we didn't disrupt the water spreading function. This area has a very opportunity natural slope, and the only shadowing would come a little bit over here, and that's something that we think we can mitigate. The fact that our crews are going to do it, we'll be able to work with the firm to get the exact slope that they want. They may want terracing, may want things like that. We're going to save a tremendous amount of money by doing the grading ourselves and getting it to the slope that works the best, and staying in Director Reynoso's good graces over in this section.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, with regards of the loss of water that is captured in those basins, I just know that we forget sometimes that we had spent, I forget, close to $1 million years ago to help fund the improvements at the Santa Anita Creek Dam there, to allow that to retain more water. And basically, that's where we get the water from that we percolate in this basin for the most part, So, so I guess I'm just making the assumption, but I'd like you to just comment on that, because of that project, that mitigates the need for these extra settling basins that we don't use very often. I mean, all the time that I've spent over there over the years, I've seen water in those things once or twice, but, yeah, but if you can.
I got a really good idea to answer that, but I think Director Reynoso can answer it directly.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. If you would have asked me 5 years ago about this project, I would have said maybe not that great of an idea, but when the county, when we helped fund that project at the county, what they ended up doing was they put a permanent notch in the dam. So when the dam reaches a certain level, it automatically spills over. And that water can't be contained, and it just flows out to the main basin. So the amount of water that they can hold behind the dam is less. So now the amount of water that they can send to Sierra Madre doesn't really fill the basins like it did 5 to 10 years ago.
Interesting.
These two basins, if you notice the basin in the uppermost left-hand side, the area to the right of that is a staging area where we put our spoils when we have water main leaks. And a lot of that, especially when it rains, makes it into that top basin, and it pretty much silts it up. So it doesn't percolate very well at all as it is now, making it just kind of a conduit for the next basin over. We have 18 spreading basins, percolation rate of about 18 cubic feet per second, or 18 acre feet per day. Eliminating these two basins would probably reduce our capacity by maybe an acre foot per day. And the only thing that would do would be extend our spreading period. We could work with the county to say, send us 1 or 2 acre feet less per day. That water would still be available behind the dam, and it would extend our spreading by a couple of days. So the impact to our ability to put water in the ground is really minimal. The benefit in the energy that we're gonna produce and save far outweighs the amount of water that gets put in those two basins.
Okay, but something you just said is contrary to my understanding of when we approved that money, because I remember doing some back of the envelope calculations on that part of that project at Santa Anita Dam was to increase the ability to percolate water and spread it differently,
If you recall, one of the major components of that was to rebuild that diversion structure. In the past, I think at least on 2 occasions, we've had storms where the flows haven't been able to be contained, and they wash that out, and then we have no ability to divert water. So one of the big benefits of us participating in that is that we're going to have a more permanent diversion structure that that will be able to withstand those types of flows so that it doesn't get washed out and prevent us from spreading what water they can detain behind that dam.
Okay, I see. So that makes sense, yeah. Okay.
Can you, and any other questions on that point?
No.
Thank you, Director Reynoso. My question before we open up for public comment, unless there's other questions? Okay, we'll go to Councilmember Arizmendi then first. Mine's a finance question, so.
Oh, okay, so I have a couple finance questions, but I had a lot of basin questions,
All right,
but I
yeah,
think
go
we
ahead.
answered a lot of the basin questions. And really, as to why the lower one wasn't considered, but thank you for being so thorough in that. I think you answered that. And also with the change in the dam and where the notch is, and I love hearing that there is an option of spreading a longer time period and reducing the amount, so that is great. Thank you also for comparing it to the putting the solar panels on the parking structure, because I liked that idea. It seemed like it made sense. You weren't creating a new area to put the solar farm, but again, this is helpful to hear that. So I have two finance questions. One is, given that we're estimating cost at about 1.2 million, one, I know you're still in negotiations, but approximately how much are we looking at a down payment? Because I assume that's going to be something we're going to front, and we're hopefully going to recoup those dollars somewhere down the line. And then the follow-up question to that was, for the $106,000 that we are looking at to get on an annual basis, are we expected to realize that full amount in year one?
Sure. At the conclusion of our interviews, the 4 last firms that we interviewed, I asked each of them to provide me some forecasts. If we were to put a $400,000 and a $500,000 down payment, and then finance the rest. So we did get some figures back on that.
Okay.
What we believe we are going to target is a 9-year return on investment, and then a 2 or 3 year cash positive situation.
Okay. In year 2 or 3, a cash positive, and thereafter about that 126,000.
So, Councilmember Arizmendi, it also, James and I went back and forth on how we want to finance this. The return on investment time period's not great at 9 years, so that means how we structure it, if council wants to go forward, becomes important. So we'd want to shorten the total repayment time, and we'd want to make this cash flow positive as quickly as possible. The most likely scenario is going to be a large down payment from the general fund, because those funds can be used later if we want to move the energy savings into water or anywhere else, facilities, and carrying a loan in the water fund for whatever the down payment from the general fund is not. That becomes important because in a business fund, the only thing you have to account for in a budget standpoint is the interest payment that you have on the loan. So in a situation where you have a $400,000 loan with 1% interest, your budget has $4,000 increased for the year. We'd look at being cash flow positive under this scenario in the first year. But again, the overall repayment, or return on investment, is 9 years, which is kind of on the margins of what we look for. So when we get a project like that, it means that we want to make sure that we're getting the benefit as quickly as possible, and we're relieving ourselves of the debt as quickly as possible. If council wants us to come back, you'll see a more thorough plan, but I think it would largely be in line with what I just explained.
So, and just to follow up with that, if we reduce the amount of the down payment, wouldn't the return of investment also be extended beyond the 9 years?
It would depend on the financing in that situation and where we put it. So overall, the return on investment, this is going to be a $1.13 million project. We're getting an offset of $126,000. So to that extent, the math is going to be pretty much what it is. The percentage rate, the down payment can push it in or out a little bit, but you're not going to see us come back in a month with a ROI at 6 years. I mean, it's going to be around 9 years.
It would be really nice if you could manage it.
I agree with that. So the things that we look at in this, one, the cash flow. So we would get a savings in the general fund of about $70,000 in year one. We'd get a savings in the water fund of about $55,000 in year one. So that is quality savings, that's quality cash flow. And then we also look at the green aspect of this, and are we being responsible as a city? So, return on investment aside, there's benefits to going forward, but the 9 years it's right on the margin.
Go ahead.
I just want to get in the weeds a little more. So the deal that we're talking about making, excuse me, are we, because the sun's only shining during the day and we have operations at night, so we're not going to be powering everything in the city with this, right? We're going to just sell this to Edison and make an exchange for power?
The idea is
Or have a battery
this-
system, do we actually run as
Sure.
our own utility?
The power generated here will be piped directly into the water distribution function.
Okay.
As far as transitions and permitting with Edison and those type of things, they're included in the scope of work. But basically, this power goes straight into water distribution to offset about 31% of what we've traditionally paid for.
Or 43%, right, of the energy.
I think it's 43%
Yeah,
of the
the
energy,
energy.
31% of the funding.
Last question on that, I guess, is just the life of this project. So, you know, I think a number that isn't in here, which I think is really, makes it really appetizing from a financial standpoint, is once you do get to that ROI level, you still have a life of a project of another, I mean, I don't know what the amount of time is, 10 to 12 years, where you are essentially in the money and
Yeah.
saving money to, you know, a large extent. So have we looked at, over the life of the project, just how much money we save / generate from this?
Gosh, I don't.
Do you understand what I'm
Yeah,
asking?
There's a
right?
lot of, we have looked at so many different scenarios, but one of the things that did strike me with this proposal were the warranties that were included.
Which is great, yeah.
The equipment, basically the panels, and or 25-year warranty on mounting and panels, and then that's 90% performance after 10 years, and then no less than 80% performance after 25.
Which is great.
And as a layman, but I confirmed it with Mr. Schneider, that's a pretty respective durability
Yep.
that you're looking at.
And I guess the point is once this thing pays for itself, you're in the money, and it's just year after year, those savings just compound. And so I think that's really important to note, that we really haven't talked about in here, but it's something to think about as well.
Well, can I comment
Yep.
on that too? Because, you know, this is what, it's hard, like you talk about the business fund with the water versus the general fund as a city municipal. But, you know, I mean, I'm looking at it that way, is that this is free money after, at the most, 9 years in any scenario that you look at it. And even beyond that, I mean, it's got a life of 20 years pretty much, but it could go beyond that. And who knows at that time if it's, you know, because the panels themselves are really a fraction of the cost of the system, and replacing the panels might be really, really economical in years to come as improvements in technology come out. So, you have to look at this a little bit differently, I think, than if it were straight, if this was just a business proposition where, you know, you like your rate of return to be such and such, because you have other alternatives to get a rate of return on that money. But in our case, a lot of the money that we would be, if we were to pay for this 100% ourselves, that money is sitting in the general fund right now, right? That's the source.
Prior to the library presentation, yes.
Well, we have $7 million of reserves,
We
so.
have $7
We do,
million
but
in reserve.
we'll have to prioritize where it comes from in the budget. So that's why in the alternatives laid out, one was full payment, option number 2 was down payment. We're much more firmly looking at option number 2 now. But it likely will come from some combination of reserves, facility funding, water funding in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so, okay, so either way you look at this, it's either a good thing as far as money sitting in the general fund, it's making less than 2% today, or it's taking some of that and prioritizing some of the projects you have, but at the same time, investment here now gives you free money and, you know, savings in future years. And I just can't see where this is a bad deal, even at a 9-year return on investment.
Yeah.
And aside from the other issues that, geez, I mean, what, I think this is just important to do because of the climate change implications here, that every day in the news, this is what the fellow was saying when he was commenting about our CPA, is that every day you're just bombarded with news about the seriousness of climate change, and here we have an opportunity to do something about it, and yet is in the best interest of Sierra Madre financially. So, I mean, so anyway, that's
Yeah.
not a question, it's more
No,
of a
no,
statement.
but I think it's helpful. I'm gonna open up, before we get to other comments, let's open up for public comment questions, and then we can bring it back.
Unexpectedly fascinating discussion
Mm.
to somebody in the arts. So I'm thinking about the new library. Is there an ordinance that requires the library on this large expanse of roof to put in solar panels?
Mm.
And if not, could they be encouraged to do that?
Good question, which we can answer after public comments. You have the answer?
I have the answer, and I'd like to make a comment.
Okay, you can make a comment, and then in the process, you can give us the answer, so yeah. I know that state law doesn't currently require it.
No, so commercially, no.
No one's gonna hear you on the,
residential-
no one's gonna hear you on the TV yet, so, yeah.
Sorry, my name's Preston McGill. No, for commercial, for residential, there is a requirement. There are plans in the next couple of years to get it on the books. So I
Yep.
do know of a project in San Luis County where it's more of a county thing. County is specifically forcing a new commercial construction to install solar. So kind of goes into your court. Then I had a public comment. I'm actually the developer on the project, so I can answer a couple of questions to kind of help out. The net savings based on multiple finance options range from 3.5 million to 4 million, and that's over a 30-year span. Usually the systems are judged in a 30-year lifetime. The warranties are 25 years for the panels respectively and 10 years for the inverters. Most of the times municipalities and governments who invest in solar do what's called an operating maintenance agreement. And so in the event of having an operating maintenance agreement, you don't really pay attention to the warranties because you're paying someone to make sure that things work. And so if they go down, it's that person you're paying or the company you're paying to take care of the warranties and replace things as they go through. So 3.5 to 4 million. We did take into account shading, and so the neighbor's house there, the simulation that you saw is actually taking into account the shading from those trees and not removing those trees at all is the figures that you see. And so if you were to do any trimming to the trees, those numbers would increase, which means you'd get a better return on the investment because the system's gonna produce more. Now you don't have to, based on the elevation and the altitude, you could basically leave it alone. Those trees are really affecting the afternoon production, and the way the system is orientated, it gets its peak production around early afternoon time, and so by the time the sun is going, it's not really gonna affect the system that much. Besides the trees already being there, you can do things like privacy slats, which you wouldn't even really see the system. The type of system is non-mechanical, so there's no moving parts. You mentioned the gentleman that's with Sun Folding. Sun Folding is a tracking company that tracks the sun. These are actually fixed tilt, so they won't move. If you went by a large site, you could hear some of the motors moving in the day, so I can understand that concern. But this is a fixed tilt, and as James mentioned, you can set the elevation to kind of hide it from view and increase production. That model is based on the land being flat. The greater where we are, we can get to about 30 to 32 degrees, the greater production. So there's a lot of things that work, and the last about 50 seconds I'll take to talk about financing options. There's options from the 1% Department of Energy loan from the state of California. There's internal financing options. There's outright cash purchase. There's a loan, and there's something called a power purchase agreement, which we've probably heard about at homes, where you can get solar for free. A lot of cities and municipalities do this. Our company is owned by Duke Energy. I work for REC Solar, so Duke Energy is a large East Coast utility, and we actually have two funds that we can finance power purchase agreements for cities and municipalities through. So what that means is that the city could get a tax credit, but because we don't pay taxes, we're kind of losing 30% of the value of going solar, and by getting a power purchase agreement, you give that to a company who finances the system. We pay nothing, we have savings, and in some PPA options, there is a cash flow positive option at year 6 and an ownership at year 8 and 9. And so there's some very interesting options as far as owning it. It really just depends on what the council wants to do.
That's helpful. Thank you. Thank you for that. There's no reason why we couldn't, though, have the library have solar power. I don't know what that butterfly glass ceiling, but anyway, that's a good question. Any other comments or questions? Okay, we'll bring it back. I'll just say quickly, I'm not sure I've been more excited about something coming before us in a long time. I think the mayor pro tem and I wanted to talk about this during the State of the City, but we didn't want to because it hadn't come before the council. So we're a little disappointed that we couldn't talk about this. But, a big reason why this got put back on, our radar and why it's here today is, I think all of us, when we approve the warrants every month, we see just how much we spend in energy costs. I mean, we're spending $50,000 to $60,000 a month to Southern California Edison to operate our municipal operations. A lot of it being our water pumping. And having been on the Clean Power Alliance now for about 2.5 years, you start thinking why? Why are we doing that? And just how clean is that energy? And it's not very clean. And so I think that this really peaked for us when we became more involved with Clean Power Alliance and realized, one, we could be using cleaner energy and saving money at the same time by potentially exploring our own solar operation, which is kind of the trend now that I think you'll see a lot of agencies, cities and counties utilizing. And I think we're on the forefront of that. You're not seeing a lot of cities, especially our size, doing this. So we are, I think, on the cutting edge, which is great. And I do think that we are really lucky in that Mr. Parkhurst and Mr. Schneider are really experts in this. And we, before we even went down this path, made sure that they were willing to help us along the way, because to pay these types of folks consulting fees would have cost us a lot of money. And they did it for free, and we really just have to give them a lot of thanks and kudos for coming in for multiple meetings, helping with the RFP process, and really making sure that where we are today, I think is optimal compared to where we were before. And I think this is the future. And I think that what we didn't talk about today is really an emergency preparedness angle too.
That's true.
I think if we ever have a natural disaster of proportions that everyone worries about, where you don't have any electricity that's being provided because towers are down, there's no way because of that to pump water. This is the only way that you ensure at a local level that your residents are safe, that water is continuing to be pumped to houses, that there is water supply to fight fires. And I think just from that perspective, having your own municipal energy source, whether it's solar, wind, battery, is just really, really critical from an emergency preparedness perspective. So I think that third aspect of this just makes this project so critical. Even if this wasn't a money-saving operation, which it clearly is, even if this wasn't helping the environment, which it clearly is, this is actually keeping us safe to the extent we see something happen to Sierra Madre, whether it is the big earthquake or another big fire, whatever, that we all hope doesn't happen. And I think that all of those reasons really make me excited about doing this. And Management Analyst Carlson really did the heavy lifting on this, so thank you very much for that. And I think that the future really is going to be, because Councilmember Goss asked about, I'm sure we're all thinking, well, how do we get this at night? The future is going to be you have batteries with your solar panels, and you have storage. And I think there is going to be a future time when we're probably building more solar in the parking structure projects, because I think we only expand these projects. I think this is probably the first of many, in my view. So that's my comment. The way I view this is really a no-brainer. I mean, I think it's just a matter of getting the financing worked out, and I think some of those options are great. But I think it's really phenomenal. So staff really just did a great job, and I would vote to bring it back in front of council.
I agree. I don't have anything to add. I think it certainly is a good project, it looks to me, and I looking forward to seeing it come back for approval.
I always think about the money, the immediate money, but when we're looking at the long term, it really is an investment, and to understand that it is an investment, and that in the 9 years, and even in the year 2 or 3, when we're starting to see some cash flow, is important. But I think too, as a city, and knowing the values of the city of Sierra Madre, how important is it for us to be in the forefront of taking this initiative, and us as a city to take this step. So in that respect, I'm looking forward to seeing it. I may not be as excited as the mayor, but again, I can see the value of this Not again just long-term, but taking this first step so that we can continue having more projects and seeing more savings and just being more green as I know we espouse to be.
It had to be sold before you talked about emergency preparedness. Man, it's a slam dunk as
Yeah.
far as I'm concerned. You're right, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Totally
Okay.
agree.
So I think you have direction, you don't need a vote, correct?
No, that's correct, Mayor.
Okay. And that is the end of our formal agenda. I think items for future agenda, I do want to agendize the Clean Power Alliance discussion. Preferably, you're gone next meeting, so maybe the second meeting of February, because we have to get it in by April 1st.
Yeah, Mayor, we can schedule it. The next meeting's the council reorganization, so traditionally we try and leave only that topic
Yep.
outside of consent.
Got it, so, okay. Any other items for future agendas? All right. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks.